In the last 6 weeks, dogs and cats have been dying across America. The official estimate is 15, but there are websites with reports in the hundreds and in the thousands. The honest answer is we don't know how many pets have lost their lives because of the failure of our system to protect the safety of pet food. This pet food crisis is about two things. It's about contaminated food. It's about a food safety system that failed us. How did it fail? Well, there were specifics. First, Menu Food Company was the first to discover that their products were dangerous. They made that discovery toward the end of February, and they waited 3 weeks to report this to the Food and Drug Administration in Washington. While they were waiting to report this contaminated and poisoned pet food, the food was being spread across America. The system, unfortunately, was not alerted to the danger that was taking place. What did Menu Foods have to lose by waiting 3 weeks? Almost nothing. We've got to change that law. We've got to make sure that there are penalties for failing a report so that the companies that are responsible or suspect contaminated pet food that don't respond are ultimately going to have to pay a price. Secondly, the inspection system for pet food across this country is terrible. People think that the federal government's keeping an eye out for all food, human food and pet food alike. The fact of the matter is there are some 12 to 15 different federal agencies that are responsible for inspecting our food. 30 different laws. More committees and subcommittees on Capitol Hill with responsibility for food safety than I can ever name. And they broke down in this system. Under this system, the Food and Drug Administration in Washington has the last word when it comes to pet food safety. But the actual inspection of the pet food facilities, the companies that are making the pet food, is conducted on a state-by-state basis. The Food and Drug Administration is like a fire department that is only called after the house burns down. Once they have contaminated food out and it's killing animals, the Food and Drug Administration gets called. That's wrong. It's entirely too late. We've got to change that system. Third, the Food and Drug Administration has no legal authority to recall a contaminated pet food. None. They can publicize it. It's up to the companies then to decide whether or not they'll recall the products. They usually do. They don't want the bad publicity of dangerous food on the shelf. But we ought to put the authority of recall in the Food and Drug Administration. And finally, we need a better early warning system. In the world that we live in, a world of internets and websites, there's no excuse for what happened here. There should be a website where veterinarians and owners and others can report suspicious findings or worrisome situations so they can be investigated on a timely basis. To wait until this information finally makes it to Washington and then makes it back to consumers across America is unacceptable in this day and age. Well, it's time to get to the bottom of this with a hearing in Washington. I called Senator Cole, who is chairman of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture, has responsibility for the Food and Drug Administration, and Herb has agreed to hold a hearing as soon as we return. Next week or a few days thereafter, the Food and Drug Administration will be called in, along with veterinarians, those part of the pet food industry, and others to talk about how we can improve this system. This was a breakdown and a failure. It has brought a lot of pain, a lot of heartache, and a lot of worry to pet owners all across America. We can do a better job in Washington. We want to make sure at the end of the day that all food, human food and pet food, is the very best that it can be. Brian Lieber has a personal... What we need to have is first the responsibility of the companies that make this pet food on a timely basis to report problems to the federal government, rather than waiting to see for weeks at a time while these products cross America. We also need to have the power of the federal government to recall tainted products. They're dangerous, poisonous. They don't have that legal authority today. We need to make sure as well that the inspections of these plants on a statewide basis really have a good standard to them so that we know that it's being done. The source of the first source, the contaminated pet food out of Emporia, Kansas, was never inspected, never. And so the system is broken down. We need better inspection standards, and we need to share the information about these problems quickly so that we can respond. Because I've been working this issue for a long, long time, and it isn't until something terrible occurs, whether it's E. coli in spinach or this pet food crisis, that it really, people say, well, I guess we have a problem. By and large, the food supply in America is the safest in the world. We can do a lot better. And what we have today was actually driven by Upton Sinclair's novel The Jungle. It scared us about what was happening in the stockyards of Chicago. He passed the first law in America. And since then, laws have been added on, agencies have been added on. It hasn't gotten any better. It's just gotten a lot bigger. Well, I can tell you this. I think it is people of the United States expect the Food and Drug Administration to do their job. Whether we're talking about the safety of prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, the food that we eat, the food that we feed our animals, we expect the federal government to do its job. We have to provide them with the resources to do it and the laws to enforce it. Losing an animal you love is a shattering experience for many people. It is just not the loss of something worth a few dollars that you paid for vaccinations or rescue food. And I think that the companies that are involved should be sensitive to that and understand that these pet food products are being provided to families that really love the cats and dogs and other animals that they fed. So I think when you see the intensity of feeling on these owners, if you've ever been a pet owner, you understand it. I was raised with dogs. Our last dog we had for 14 years. She was part of the family. And when she passed away years ago, my wife and I still talk about her. It sounds kind of crazy if you aren't a pet owner, but it's not if you are.